Derek Thompson lost his long-awaited job interview because he stopped to help a stranger in distress. The company's strict schedule left no room for compassion, shutting the door on him without a second thought. But fate had been watching, and it had a surprise that would turn his loss into something far greater. Just wait until you hear the twist that brought justice full circle. For almost a year, Derek Thompson had been waking up to the same routine. Coffee gone lukewarm in a chipped mug, the sound of the mail slot clicking open, and another thin envelope with his name printed neatly on the front. Inside, the same cold words, "We appreciate your interest, but—" He had stopped reading the rest months ago. This morning felt different. Not brighter, the sky was still gray, the streets still slick from last night's rain, but heavier with possibility. His one good suit hung from the back of a chair, pressed the night before. The fabric wasn't new, but it carried a certain dignity. He slipped it on carefully, checking the mirror to make sure the collar lay flat. His tie was a little faded, but he straightened it until the knot felt firm against his throat. In his hands, the worn leather folder, scuffed at the corners, the stitching frayed, held his resume, references, and a cover letter he'd rewritten so many times he could recite it. The downtown high-rise loomed ahead like a sheet of glass pulled up toward the clouds. Inside, the lobby was alive with movement, the crisp tap of heels on marble, the soft hum of conversation layered over the faint chime of an arriving elevator. The air smelled faintly of fresh coffee, drifting from somewhere behind the reception desk. Derek checked the time above the desk. He was exactly on schedule. Then, just to his right, a motion caught his eye. A young woman, mid-20s, in a pale gray coat, stumbled as the strap of her heavy bag slid off her shoulder. The bag dropped to the polished floor with a soft thud, the clasp snapping open. In an instant, paper spilled out in all directions. Thick folders, clipped contracts, loose handwritten notes, even a pen that rolled toward the revolving doors. For a second, the world kept moving as if nothing had happened. People streamed past, eyes locked on their phones, voices still carrying on mid-sentence, stepping around the mess like it was a puddle on the sidewalk. Derek's legs moved before his mind could weigh the cost. He crouched down, one hand gathering papers, the other keeping a folder from sliding under a bench. The floor was cold through the thin fabric of his pants. "Here, these look like they belong together," he said quietly, aligning a stack so the pages faced the same way. The woman's hands trembled as she took them. Her hair had fallen across her face, her breathing quick and shallow. "Thank you. I'm late for a very important meeting," she murmured, almost to herself. The elevator doors behind them slid open with a soft ding. Derek glanced at the clock again. His time slot was minutes away. If he stood up now and stepped inside, he could still make it. But she was still crouched on the floor, fumbling with the last of her documents, her bag stubbornly refusing to close. In that pause, Derek's choice crystallized. "Go," he said firmly, rising to his feet and pressing the open button with his thumb until she looked up. Her eyes met him for the first time, startled, almost unsure, then softened with something like gratitude. She stepped into the elevator. "You'll make it," he added with a small nod. The doors closed with a quiet hiss. The hum of the lobby filled the space again. And just like that, Derek was left standing alone, watching the floor numbers climb, carrying with them what could have been his one real shot in months. The elevator doors slid shut in front of Derek, and for a moment he just stood there, hand still resting on the cool metal frame. The faint hum of machinery above felt louder than it should have been, and in the reflection on the doors, he caught the faintest image of himself, suit pressed, tie straight, leather folder clutched tight, looking like a man ready for a conversation that would never happen. Another elevator arrived with a muted ding. Derek stepped inside. The space smelt faintly of cleaning solution and coffee from someone's travel mug left behind. He pressed the button for the 25th floor, watching the small circle glow amber beneath his fingertip. The ride upward felt slow, not in seconds, but in weight. Each floor number lit up with mechanical patience, the sound of the cable shifting above like a long exhale. Derek glanced at his watch. He knew he was already late. Still, a part of him, the hopeful, stubborn part, whispered, maybe, just maybe. The doors opened to a quiet reception area. The chairs along the wall were empty, their cushions smooth from a day with no waiting guests. Behind the desk, a woman in a charcoal blazer looked up from a stack of papers. She had the practiced gaze of someone who had already said the same sentence too many times that morning. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, her tone polite but final. "The interviews are closed for today." For a heartbeat, Derek considered explaining. He could tell her about the woman in the lobby, the papers on the floor, the choice he'd made. But he saw in her eyes that it wouldn't matter. Policies didn't bend for stories. "I understand," he said quietly, forcing a small nod. His voice didn't shake, but inside he felt something settle. Not like a fall, more like a door being closed. He thanked her and turned away. The ride down was silent. The elevator walls reflected him from every angle, making him look like a man caught between versions of himself. The one who might have walked into an interview room and the one who had let it pass. The lobby was brighter now, sunlight pooling across the marble floor. As he stepped through the revolving door, a rush of warm air met him, carrying the faint scent of roasted coffee from a cart across the street. The city felt louder outside. Buses groaning, crosswalk signals chirping, the distant rhythm of jackhammers on some construction site. Derek moved slowly down the steps, leather folder still in hand. His rent was due in a week. His savings could cover maybe another month. That knowledge sat in him like an extra weight in his chest, heavy but familiar. And yet, under the quiet ache of disappointment was something stubborn, a pride that didn't demand applause, didn't need an audience. His grandmother's words drifted into his thoughts, clear as the day she'd said them while mending a tear in his school jacket. "Your character is your resume for heaven." He exhaled through his nose, a breath that felt half like surrender and half like resolve. Maybe it didn't count for much in this city. Maybe it wouldn't pay the bills or change his circumstances overnight. But it was his. And today, that was enough to keep him walking. That evening, Derek sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, a chipped mug of tea cooling untouched at his elbow. The only light came from a lamp in the corner, casting a warm but thin glow across the room. Outside, the city hummed. Traffic murmurs, a distant siren, the faint rhythm of footsteps in the hallway. But inside, it was just him and the replay in his head. Again and again he saw it. The conference room upstairs. The panel of interviewers waiting. Pens ready, eyes scanning him as he walked in. He imagined the firm handshake he would have given. The confident way he'd answer their first question. The way his years of experience might have finally meant something. In his mind, he played through every possible version of that meeting, each ending with a nod of approval, maybe even a smile. But in reality, the door had never opened for him. Instead, the memory always snapped back to the lobby, to the moment the elevator carried someone else upward while he stayed behind. He leaned back in his chair, fingers tapping slowly against the folder still sitting in front of him. It wasn't fair. He had done the right thing, the thing people always say you should do, and yet he was the one paying the price for it. The thought gnawed at him like a quiet ache he couldn't shake. In a city where everyone was fighting tooth and nail just to keep their place, maybe kindness wasn't a virtue. Maybe it was a risk, one he couldn't afford anymore. He stared at the folder, the paper inside crisp and ready for an opportunity that had slipped through his hands. The city didn't reward selflessness. It tested it. It punished it. And for the first time in months, Derek wondered if he'd made a mistake. 2 mornings later, Derek was sitting at the same kitchen table, a half-eaten slice of toast on the plate in front of him when his phone lit up. An unfamiliar number. He almost let it go to voicemail, another telemarketer maybe, but something made him answer. "Mr. Thompson?" The voice on the other end was warm, measured. "This is Alicia Monroe. I'd like you to come in tomorrow for a meeting." Derek's brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, I don't think we've met." There was a brief pause before she continued. "We have. I was the woman in the lobby you helped." The words landed like a sudden chord, pulling him upright in his chair. In an instant, the image of her on the marble floor, papers scattered like leaves, flashed through his mind. The next day, Derek walked into the same glass building, but the weight in his chest was different. This time, he wasn't just hoping for a chance, he was stepping into one. Alicia met him outside the office suite. Up close, she seemed even more composed than he remembered, her gray coat replaced with a tailored navy blazer. She smiled, and the warmth in it was unmistakable. "I saw what you did," she said, motioning for him to follow her inside. "You didn't know who I was, you didn't ask for anything, but you chose to help, even knowing it might cost you. That's exactly the kind of person we need here, someone who chooses people over schedules." She extended her hand across the desk. "If you want the job, it's yours." For a moment, Derek just looked at her hand, as if trying to make sure the offer was real. Then he shook it, his grip firm but his voice unsteady as he said, "Yes, thank you." The meeting ended quickly, paper signed, an offer letter neatly folded into a company envelope. When Derek stepped back into the lobby, sunlight was pouring through the glass wall, turning the marble floor into a pale reflection of the sky. He held the envelope in his hand, his fingers brushing the raised company logo through the paper. He was overjoyed. This was the break he had been waiting for. But as he stood there, watching people hurry past just as they had the day he'd first walked in, a quiet thought settled over him. How many others had done what he did, chosen someone else's need over their own, and walked away unnoticed? How many moments of quiet decency went unseen, unrewarded? The thought stayed with him as he pushed open the door and stepped into the street. His life had just changed, but he knew the world would keep moving, often blind to the quiet choices that made it a little better. And that made him hold his envelope just a little tighter.